Hey, welcome to the Straight Sports Podcast. We're your hosts, Tushar, and
Joshua.
in this podcast, we will give our opinions on our favorite sports, which are basketball, soccer, and wrestling.
So, topic one, NBA. The Dallas Mavericks were 29 and 26, fourth in the Western Conference. Then, after the Kyrie Irving trade, the Dallas Mavericks went 9 and 18 and ended up the 11th seed, missing both the play-in and the playoffs. So, what are your thoughts on this?
For me, my thoughts on this is I'm stunned, to see the Dallas Mavericks miss the playoffs or the play-in. I mean, even, before when they made the Kyrie Irving trade, I think Danny, who went on here, and unfortunately, bad takes are saved on podcast. He had a bad take, including us. We're talking about the Dallas Mavericks potentially being a championship team. We're all going to have to live with that because that was probably one of the worst takes we've ever made. We just went on based on talent, right?
Yeah.
Based on talent, those two guys, but defensively they're bad, really bad, and I didn't know it was going to affect them that much. But even offensively too, they would, they scored 120. Like with that kind of team, you'd think, okay, Kyrie, Luka, they could get you 40-40. But the game against Phoenix was so impressive. You think, wow, this is going to be fun, but I just don't know what happened to their season. I think the Kyrie and Luka, a lot of people thought it would just mesh better, and it didn't. And I think the value of Dinwiddie and Dorian Finney-Smith went up really high because those are the two players that really helped them in that conference finals run. But I'm stunned, I'm shocked, and I still don't believe that Luka Doncic is not in the playoffs.
100% agree. I mean, with the talent that this roster has, two superstars, I'd say. I mean, no one expected them to be in this position. We thought, giving Luka an extra star would, elevate him to another level. And we seen what he did by himself, so it only makes sense that adding a talent like Kyrie would just, elevate the team. But in fact, it did the exact opposite. And it's weird because neither of them played bad in a sense. It just didn't mesh. And it's just really weird
Defensively,
to
they were
me.
bad, and down the stretch, like you talk about clutchness, like they're playing Indiana. Kyrie Irving tries to get a three up, didn't
Yeah.
work. Or that play against Minnesota, their defense was so good, they could even get a shot up. So it's just crazy. But man, we're gonna have to live with this bad take, Josh. I think we
For
all
real.
three said that the
Yeah,
Dallas
no.
Mavericks were
But it
somewhat
makes sense though.
contenders.
Like
At the
it would
time
make
we
sense,
said it,
yeah.
obviously now when we made our list, they weren't even on our list. Obviously because they missed the postseason. But
Yeah.
after, when seeing them, I was like, okay, they're not legit, right? But at the time we felt, okay, yeah, they look like a real threat in the Western Conference. And me, you, and Danny just gonna have to live and accept and apologize for the bad take.
Yeah. So who do you think is to blame for, the Dallas failures after the Kyrie trade?
It's easy for people to put that blame on Kyrie, which a lot of people have done. And
Yep.
his history, probably might tell you, is it his fault? You look at what kind of happened in Brooklyn, the disaster. A lot of the blame, tends to go on him. Boston, you know, have made it to the finals after he left. Um, you know, Cleveland obviously was a different situation. He left and then LeBron left, and now they're finally back, to being a postseason team. But blame goes all the way. I think it's, everybody takes a share of the blame. The front office, the ownership, like Mark Cuban and Nico Harrison, you got to put some blame on there. Obviously, the roster, even before the trade, it wasn't the best roster. It was so. Lucas still had to do a lot. Like he scored 60 to barely beat the Knicks, and they were
Yeah.
down 9. Like he had to go historic. So you think the Kyrie Irving trade would help him, but like you said, it had the opposite effect. But you could throw blame, on I would say regardless, Luka is the leader. Maybe you got to put some blame on him. I wouldn't put too much, but again, he is the leader of this team. This is his franchise, and like you say, star players always somewhat get the blame. Um, and then also Kyrie, you got to put some blame on him. I think it's a collection of everybody. You could even throw the coach. I don't know, like you could put a collection of everybody for the blame. I can't just put the blame on one person.
Yeah, I agree. Like you said, I don't really agree with all the blame being put on Kyrie because it's not like he had bad games. He was just being Kyrie. We know he can't defend. We know he's not like an elite playmaker, but he's a serviceable playmaker. He was just playing his game. They both play how they regularly play, just that the defensive lapses were too much to overcome. And you can't outscore every team. So it just showed that, the issue isn't offensively, it's just mainly defensively. Like you said, the loss of Finney Smith really hurt them. And who do I blame the most? I wouldn't say anyone takes the most of the blame because, like I said, no one played bad. It is Luka's team though, so I mean that says something. But you could also put blame on the coaches, Kyrie too, because we know his effect on teams. But I don't think there's anyone really to blame because everything that went wrong, it wasn't like anything like stood out of wrong they were doing. They just couldn't like defend. They couldn't win games. Everyone played how they were supposed to play. It just didn't work out. So yeah,
Yeah, but like I said, I think we both agree. Like I think I generally put on the front office.
yeah, you
Front
have to.
office and Mark Cuban, you put on
Yep,
some on Kyrie, some on Luca, some on the coach. Because regardless,
100%.
the reason why this trade happened, Luca said yes to it. Mark Cuban claimed
Yep,
that they asked him first. He clearly wanted this trade to happen. You got to put blame on everybody. And it's unfortunate because Kyrie's history just doesn't give him a good look. What's happened
yeah,
in Boston when he left? They made it to the finals. When the year that he got injured, they made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. The year he came back, they got bounced in round two. You look at Brooklyn, the disaster. I'm going to say this. I don't know if you're going to agree, but the Brooklyn Nets are in the playoffs. Kyrie Irving is
yeah.
not.
That's
They have
true.
made the playoffs regardless. A lot of people thought they would fall even lower. I know they were fourth at the time Kyrie left, but they only dropped to six. And
Hmm.
they played decently well. Mikal Bridges was balling. Shout out Jock Vaughn. What a job he done.
Cam Thomas.
Um, Cam Thomas. He kind of lost minutes, but
Yeah,
yeah. But Mikal Bridges was like what Eastern Conference Player of the Week. Like all the things they done. Brooklyn made it. Kevin Durant made the playoffs. Kyrie didn't. I'm gonna ask you a question later on something about Kyrie Irving. So let's just move on.
yeah. So, do you think the Mavs regret making the trade for Kyrie Irving?
I don't know. This is a tough question. I mean, I think initially probably no, right? Because it's Kyrie Irving, and I think they were willing to take that risk, knowing that he could probably leave if it doesn't work. But I don't think they thought it was gonna end up this badly this season. So in some sense, you could understand there is some regret because bottom line, if you think about what they gave up, Kyrie Irving's a potential rental. Things went all south this season, so a lot of people expect he would leave. Dorian Finney-Smith was locked up for 4 years. He's their best defender. He's not there anymore. Spencer Dinwiddie was great for them, was a great fit for them, had a huge impact on that conference finals run. He's not there anymore. And again, this might be big. They gave up a 2029 unprotected first round pick and 2 second round picks. They gave up a couple of picks to get
Yeah,
a rental. And looking at it right now, I think they regret it. But if Kyrie Irving stays, that might change.
yeah. Like you said, I pretty much agree. I don't think they regret it because they knew like they're kind of on the clock. Luca, as we'll get into later, he wants to win. He wants to compete at the highest level, and to do that, you need more help around him. So I feel like they recognized the gamble. They knew that Kyrie might not sign. They knew it was a potential, rental, like you said, and they went with it. They knew the risk. They knew what they're giving up Finney Smith defensively, and they took the risk. I don't think they regret it. Maybe they wish that they could have performed better, but I don't think it's a regret because it's a chance you got to take. So like they say, if you don't take the risk, you lose a chance. So there was a possibility for them being a really, really great team in the postseason, but it just didn't work out that way. So I don't think they regret it. I think they just wish that things played out differently.
But if he leaves, they might regret it for what they gave up.
That's
Now
true, but
looking
I
back
feel
at
like they
it,
always knew it was a rental and there's no guarantees going to resign.
but
But
I don't. But nobody saw this coming where they, missed the
yeah, missed the playoffs.
play-in.
That's true,
Yeah, playing.
and
Con-
playoffs.
yeah, forget about in playoffs. They missed the play-in. That's what's more stunning. So I don't think anybody. And now that he's leaving, and now if you look at the way Dorian Finney-Smith is, it's a glue guy. He kind of plays. He plays his role. Dinwiddie's a great player, and they got that draft capital from Dallas. So Dallas Mavericks lost a lot, but I think if Kyrie leaves, they definitely gonna look at it as like, man, they regret,
Yeah.
especially for how it played out, and
Hmm.
then they have to retool and try to build around Luca again. But if he stays and
That's
get
true.
more time to build this chemistry for another year, then I don't think they'll regret it. But hopefully he stays.
Yeah.
That'd be the best case scenario for Dallas. But before we move on, I just want to say one thing. What do you thought about them when they beat Sacramento? We
Yeah.
saw, and then Luca only played the first quarter.
Yeah. I was
Everybody
gonna
else did
say.
not play. Like, what do
Yeah.
you thought about that for that potential uh, top 10 protected pick? That something with the Knicks, they
Yeah.
owned it or
I've seen
something.
that. Yeah.
So obviously, wow. Then looks like the Knicks are a biggest winner. That Porzingis trade was, and
Yep.
Porzingis balling in
Came back
Washington.
to
So
bite him.
mm,
Yeah. To me, it was kind of weird. Like, you. It's not like they were complete out. They had a chance to still make the play-in. They
mm.
essentially gave up on the season, rested most of their players. I mean, Luka played the first quarter, but it's just kind of weird. You have a chance to make the postseason. You know that your chances of retaining Kyrie increase with you making the postseason. And Mark Cuban goes and says, I don't know if it was on Mark Cuban, it probably was, and something to do with the coaches and stuff. They say, we're not even going to attempt to make the postseason. We value this pick more than we value the postseason, which to me makes no sense. Because, like I said, your chances of retaining Kyrie increase with you making the postseason. I don't know
Um,
what they were thinking with this. To me, it makes no sense. And I guess I can't even explain what was going on with
Yeah.
that decision. To me, it makes no sense. Maybe you can explain it better.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I didn't like it. I mean, for me personally, it just gives, if your goal is to, try to keep Luca there long terms. Obviously, he's signed. We're about to talk about this, but Luca was obviously they even asked about him. He didn't agree with that decision. He didn't like the idea, right?
Hmm.
They asked him about this, and he was honest, right? But he only played one quarter, and the fact that I feel like if you're not mathematically out, you might as well tried because
Yeah,
you still would have end up 11th anyways if you wouldn't have made it. You could have at least tried. I just don't like the fact that they gave up early. They just I feel like they looked at it as like, okay, we're not. They just thought like, okay, our team is not good. We're not going to do anything in the postseason. If we make the play, we're not going to do anything. So let's just give up now and try to get this top 10 pick, which I guess is very high value for them
yeah.
apparently. But I just don't like the fact that they did it, knowing that how does it look for Luca? Luca, he clearly wanted to play, and if my franchise guy wants to play and he wants to at least give it a try, I would do that. I wouldn't do this. It's just a bad look on the franchise. And I don't know how Luca, might think about this long term, how it affects them, down the line if things continue to go the way they're going.
100% agree. Like I even heard that they were being investigated by the NBA because of their decision to sit players. I mean, and I know how
Yeah.
those go. You probably end up forfeiting some picks. So was it really worth it? Like to me, it
No.
makes no sense. I don't know what they were thinking. Very questionable move by Mark Cuban in the front office. I mean, this franchise seems to be like I can't even describe what they're doing. To me, it makes no sense.
Mm.
But next, we have a quote here from ESPN's Tim McMahon. It says, "There's a strong sense of urgency within the organization to expedite the process before Doncic loses faith in the Mavs' ability to build a contender around him. He's wrapping up his first season of a 5-year, $215 million supermax contract with the player option for the final season. Team sources have acknowledged to ESPN fear exists that Doncic, who publicly and privately expressed extreme frustration this season, could consider requesting a trade as soon as the summer of 2024 if Dallas don't make significant progress by then." So Luka did come out to, I guess, go against these reports. He said that it was kind of funny because I didn't know that was true and I didn't say that. So he completely went against the report and he said that he's happy to be here and there's nothing to worry about. So that's interesting. However, Luka also said that something has got to change for sure. He says last year we went to the conference finals, we were having fun. I always talk about the chemistry we had. It was great, but something's got to change for sure. So what are your thoughts on this? And do you think Luka might request a trade down the line if he doesn't see any improvement in Dallas?
Definitely a lot. Obviously, there was a report, and maybe there was fear among the Dallas organization, for what happened this season. And obviously, he's your star player, and Luka's all about winning. And he went to the conference finals last season with Dallas, and this season they even make the play in. So there's obviously understandable there might be some fear, but obviously Luka, saying those reports were not true and saying that he's happy here, that keeps a sigh of relief for Dallas for now. But for me, never say never because you never know down the line if he'll request to trade or not. It doesn't seem like it, but how about 2 or 3 years down the line, it's nothing's improved. Then yeah, maybe he might request to trade down the line. But for right now, I don't think there's nothing to worry about. But Dallas's only goal this offseason should try to do what they can to build a championship roster around Luca. And also, Luka Doncic even said he took some blame on himself. Luka, as offensively talented as he is, obviously Luka Doncic has ways to improve on the game, and that means on the defensive side of the game because he's an elite offensive player, but he's not a good defender. There's no knock on him, but it's just the truth.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, I feel like, yeah, he did reassure them that he wants to stay long term, but everything like there's a time limit because there's only so much he can put up with. You know, he wants to stay and build a winner here, like Dirk did. One of his idols or his mentors. But I feel like you got to be realistic. You can't just expect him to be playing for nothing and not competing at the highest level. Like you said, they were just in the conference finals. To go from conference finals to not even being in the playoffs slash play in is embarrassing. That's a step back. So this offseason, I think Dallas has to try to bring some big free agents, make some big moves to impress him and to appease him because I feel like yes, even though he did say he wants to stay down the line, when he's seeing other players play at the highest level and compete and win things, he's gonna want to win too. So I think yes, there's a possibility or a chance that he could request a trade later down the line. I mean, I don't see it happening, but there's always a chance of it. So next, Kyrie Irving declined to speak to the media for an exit interview. Is this something, everything, or nothing? And do you think Kyrie Irving will stay with the Mavs next season or sign with the new team?
I think it's something because regardless, bottom line is, after the season ends, they have a job and then they have to, do these kind of exit interviews, and he didn't do it. This is not the first time he declined it. It's happened in Brooklyn. Pretty sure it's happened in other places. I don't know the exact stats on this, but I think he should have done it, and it just put speculation that like why he didn't want to do it is maybe it could be something else that we don't know about, and or it could be something that maybe people speculate is that is he really leaving Dallas? I mean, if you're not even doing an exit interview, it's going to put some speculation and concern in people's minds. And do you think? I mean, this is my thing. What is the contract he's looking for? I don't think Dallas Mavericks going to offer him a 4-year deal, which he wanted. Um, I think he'll probably get a shorter term deal. It's clear Dallas wants to resign him. It's just bottom line of what other teams are going to offer to him because the only team that comes to mind that with Kyrie Irving, he's always connected to the Lakers for some reason. So that's the only team that comes to mind. But I'm pretty sure there's a team that's be willing to sign him based on his talents. But I don't think he's going to get the long term deal that he wants from anywhere. But I would probably be booking the fact that Kyrie Irving will be on a new team next season. I think there's more of a chance he leaves than he stays.
So for me, this is something slash everything because we know Kyrie and the media. So I'm gonna say that maybe he was advised not to speak to the media because of his past issues.
Mhm.
But him not showing up for the exit interview, I mean, that's a team mandated thing, to my knowledge. I mean, we know how it began in Dallas. Him walking the streets, supporting the fans, and to me, it feels like it's kind of ending on a sour note with them not even making the play-in or postseason. So I mean, like, it's kind of tough because I feel like on one hand, he didn't want to show up to the exit interview. Maybe this could be a sign that he's out of there and he doesn't want to stay. But on the other hand, he could have been advised not to take the interview. You know how him and the media clash. So I don't really know. But to just the second part of the question, do I think he will stay? I do not think he will be staying. I do not think he'll be resigning. Them not making the postseason, I feel like that's the icing on the cake, the cherry on the top. I think he wants to compete at the highest level, which I think they can do, but I don't think he wants to wait around for them to see what they could do in free agency. I think he's leaving. Where he might go, I don't know, but I can't say that I see Kyrie Irving in a Mavericks uniform next season.
Okay, and then real quick, I just want to ask you something. Do you think Kyrie Irving should regret leaving Brooklyn?
I'm gonna say no, simply because of all the controversy and all the issues that he had with Joe Tsai and the front office there. I feel like he left because he didn't want to be there. So I think him staying wouldn't do much. I guess from the point of view you could say somewhat yes, because Brooklyn is in the playoffs. They are playing well. KD's in the playoffs. So he's the only one that's sitting at home this postseason. So I feel like in the sense of personal issues, no. Maybe basketball wise, competitive wise, yes. But overall, I'm going to say no. I don't think he regrets it at all.
For me personally, I don't know whether he regrets it or not. But for me personally, the only thing is that the reason, at least the report that what we know is that the reason he left Brooklyn was because he, for the contract, it was a business decision, right? He wanted a contract extension, and then it went south with them, and he ultimately requested a trade because he felt disrespected or whatnot. He goes to Dallas. He's gonna wait till free agency to get his contract, right? And now things didn't go that well this season. I don't know if Dallas is willing to offer him a 4-year deal. Even I think they asked Mark Cuban, like, do you think you'll be willing to pay, higher about uh, keeping him? And he didn't directly say yes. So he kind of just said, obviously we know with the CBA and all this, like the bird rights, everything's going higher and stuff. Like it didn't feel like a definite yes. So like, yeah, we're willing to do that was an explanation that he gave. So my thing is that Kyrie Irving, he wanted to leave. Like obviously he left Brooklyn, but now he had a better chance of getting that long term deal in Brooklyn, especially the Brooklyn that's probably would have been a higher seat. They probably would have made a deep run to the postseason, and then he probably would have got the contract he wanted or somewhat of it. And now in Dallas, it just seems like he would only get a 2-year deal, which Brooklyn I think was offering him anyways last year during the middle of the season. So that
Yeah.
doesn't seem like it made sense for him to leave. I think he could have got that contract in Brooklyn. But anyways, it is what it is. Let's move on to topic number 2. So what are your NBA play-in predictions for the Eastern and Western Conference? So let's start off the 7-seeded Miami Heat versus the 8-seed Atlanta Hawks.
I'm gonna go with the Heat here. I mean, the Hawks have been struggling. There's
Mm,
been some issues in and outside the organization
mhm,
with, I mean, on and off the court, I should say. There's been some issues on and off the court. So I don't know if they're really going to be, playing as a unit right now. And the Heat are a solid team all around. They got Jimmy, they got Bam, they got Hero, they got some great role players, some great depth, an elite coach, solid organization all around. So I think the Heat will take this matchup.
mm. Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you. You gotta give it to the Miami Heat. I think they're gonna win this game. The Atlanta Hawks, we know, are an average basketball team. They're not great. They're not terrible. They're just a middle average team. But Miami Heat, we know when it comes to the playoffs, because this play-in is basically the playoffs. You play in for a seeding to get the 7th seed, to lock it up and try to play Boston in the first round. But Jimmy Butler always elevates in those situations. He got a good team around him. They got good defensive players. And Atlanta Hawks, they have Trey Young and DeJounte Murray, but things have not really gone well with those two together. DeJounte Murray's been inconsistent. Trey Young's kind of had issues with the coach and whatnot. So there's been a lot of things going south with that organization. But I got to give it to Miami. I think, they got, the elite coach. They got the better, the overall team. They got the elite star power, elite depth. They got better depth too. So I got to give Miami Heat that game. And I think they'll get the 7th seed and play the Boston Celtics in the first round, which will be a very fun matchup. So let's move on. The 7 seeded Lakers versus the 8 seeded Timberwolves.
I'm gonna go with the Lakers here. I mean, they've been on a pretty good hot streak to end the season. LeBron is back. AD's been on fire.
Hmm.
The roster just come together the whole. The Timberwolves, they've also had some issues on and off the court,
Hmm.
with some recent issues with the team. I think we'll talk about a bit later. But with Gobert out, McDaniels out, I can't see them standing a chance. So I think the Lakers will take this matchup.
Yeah, for me, I'm gonna give it to the Lakers. They're home. They're playing at LA. LeBron's back. He's been balling. AD's been balling. The last 2.5 months of the season, he really big credit to him. He really the time LeBron was out, he really carried the team, put him on his back. He's been phenomenal. They ended on a high note. They got the pieces that fit their team, and then Minnesota, everything's gone south. Obviously, with the Jaden McDaniels news, uh, knowing that that's their best defender, now they don't have that kind of guy to put on LeBron James, so that's going to be tough. And obviously you're missing Rudy Gobert as well. So
Yep,
I just don't see a fact that see how they win the game. I think this could be a blowout. But if the Minnesota Timberwolves, again, one game, anything can happen. So we'll see. Never say never on that. But
that's
the
true.
Lakers should win this game pretty easily. But let's talking about that. Obviously, with the Minnesota situation, we saw obviously Rudy Gobert and Kyle Anderson got into some sort of argument. The words were exchanged, and then Rudy Gobert kind of took a cheap shot at him and it ended up hitting him in the chest, and he
Yeah.
was sent home, and then he ended up being suspended. And then JD McDaniels hit himself, punched a wall, and now he's out for the season, I think with a fractured hand or something. So what are your thoughts on this whole Minnesota situation?
I mean, just embarrassing to be honest. It shows the inexperience of this team. I mean, let's talk about the Rudy incident first. He's supposed to be a vet, as is Kyle Anderson, but you expect this from two young players, two inexperienced players. These are two veteran players in the league. They both been in the league for a decent amount of time, and doing this is just embarrassing. I mean, you know what you're playing for, and it's just sad to see. It makes no sense. I don't understand what he could have said. I did hear some rumors about what he did say. I mean, obviously not some nice words, but I still feel like you don't do that to your teammate, especially on live TV in front of the fans. If you're not condoning it, but if it's gonna happen, let it happen behind the scenes. But I just don't get it at all. With the McDaniel incident, I mean, I don't understand what was the reasoning for that. What was he so upset at? I mean, it makes no sense. You punch the wall, you know how important you are to your team. You break your hand out indefinitely. I mean, this could ultimately change their postseason, and I think it has changed their postseason. To me, it makes no sense, and I feel like this team has some issues to address in the offseason.
So first, with the Rudy Gobert incident, it's a very embarrassing situation, to see what Rudy Gobert did, regardless of what the words were said. And obviously there was very not nice words from Kyle Anderson and Rudy Gobert. They
Yep.
both exchanged a lot of pretty crazy words. But I regardless, like you say, you don't do that to your own teammate. You don't do that in front of live TV on your bench when you're the
Yeah.
last game of the regular season. And this is a guy who's a vet, and he's kind of showing immaturity. And that's what we talk about the Minnesota Timberwolves. Their immaturity when it comes to a basketball team and inexperience. But a guy like Rudy Gobert, who's a vet, who's done this, and this was unfortunate. He not this kind of incident, but when he was in with Utah with the COVID situation, what he did, he was touching all
Yeah,
the
touching on
mics
the
and
mics.
everything. Again, showed his immaturity, and he's done it again. Yeah, he might have apologized, but now it's like it's the it's this thing with like how would their relationship ever be the same? This is something that's so like it just happened right now. You just expect in a week, like I think there's a difference because it hit him in the chest, not the face. That could have been a lot different. But regardless, it's just inexcusable by him, and I think the Timberwolves did the right thing by suspending him. Because I don't know if you put him on the floor with Kai Anderson right now, just what would happen? You need to keep him away from the team,
Yeah,
and it's crazy because once he was gone, and obviously Jaden McDaniel's situation, the Minnesota Timberwolves came back against the
and won the
Pelicans and used
game.
that fuel and actually beat the Pelicans. And for me personally, watching that as a Clippers fan, I'm like, dang, we beat the Suns. And if we would have lost, that means we would have got the 6th seed and play Sacramento instead of the Suns. And now we have no Paul George potentially for the first round. So it's like, I'm pretty upset because obviously in the beginning, I'm like, okay, the Clippers got to win this game because I'd rather them not be in the play in, knowing their history last year. And, also you just never know, playing is one game. So I was happy the fact that they won. But when the Timberwolves came back, it's just like, damn. But the NBA, all the games are at the same time. So it is what it is. And it comes to Jaden McDaniels, you got to know how important he is to your team. I know you get frustrated, but to do something like that, it's again, this Minnesota Timberwolves have showed immaturity levels at very high, and something got to learn for. And regardless, and one thing I'll say, and I'll say it again, the Rudy Gobert trade is going to go down as the worst trade in NBA history. That I don't know what that Minnesota GM did. If you look at the piece they gave up, they could have had Vanderbilt right now, Beasley, Patrick Beverly, Kessler, who's been playing better than Gobert this
Yeah,
season. This incident has nothing to do with it. I just want to reiterate that this is one of the worst trades in NBA history.
yeah.
So let's move on. The 9 seeded Raptors versus the 10 seeded Chicago Bull.
I'm going with the Raptors here. I mean, the Bulls have been shaky.
Mm,
Yeah, they got a lot of talent with DeRozan and Levine, but I feel like the Raptors defensively would just be a nightmare for them. They have a great core. Uh, Scotty Barnes, Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet. They have some great role players too. OG and Uobi. And yeah, I feel like the Raptors will take this.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you here. I mean, I'm going with the Raptors, the 9 seed Raptors, to win this game. Chicago's been great. Recently, obviously they've had a bad season. Patrick Beverley's addition definitely has helped boost them and at least get them into the play-in position. He's brought a good vocal leadership. But regardless, I think the Raptors, it's just so crazy to see them so low, for all the talent that they have. Defensively, they're a really good team. They got all the defensive pieces. They got some talent. Fred VanVleet, Pascal Siakam, who's been balling this season. Scotty Barnes, great player. They have a lot of great players, and I think they're going to win this game. And they're playing in at home, so you expect them. I expect them to get this win. So moving on, the 9 seeded Pelicans versus the 10 seeded OKC Thunder.
This will be a good game to watch. Two good young teams, but I will be going with the Pelicans here.
Mm,
I feel like I don't know. I feel like they're just a step above the Thunder. I mean, yes, the
mm,
Thunder are really good, but I believe Brandon Ingram will have a big game. You know, he is a big game player. He's an extremely talented player. CJ
mm.
McCollum as well. And I just feel like they have the edge over the Thunder. Shai's no slouch. Obviously, he's a great player, but I just feel like the Pelicans will take this one.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with the Pelicans, even though they don't got Zion. They got CJ and Brandon Ingram, who has been balling. Um, that game that they lost against Minnesota was big. They should have won
Yeah,
that game. They was up big time, and you have two chances to play for the to make the playoffs, and now you have to win 2 games. This is the same situation they were in last season, and they did. They made it as the 8th seed. So kind of disappointed that they lost that game. You got to win that game, and um, that's a game they're up. I think I'm more disappointed because I'd rather them win and the Clippers win, and I'm mad because they lost. So the Clippers could have lost and got that 6th seed, right? So that's why I'm more upset. It's really more from the team I root for, my favorite player Kawhi. But regardless, I think they'll win this game. I mean, like I say never. You never know. OKC could pull this off with Shy. Could probably drop 50 in a game. But I'm gonna give the Pelicans this win, and so then so basically, since we picked up all the same teams, kind of. So in that sense, we would both have the Miami Heat
yeah,
and the Lakers being the 7 seeds and advancing in their first round series, and then so us again. So let's move on. So the next we would have the 8 seeded Atlanta Hawks, so the loser of the 7th and 8th matchup from the East versus um the winner of the 9-10 matchup. So it would be the Raptors. So you would have the Hawks versus the Raptors, eighth versus ninth. Who would you have winning for the eighth seed?
I'm gonna go with the Raptors again, winning here.
Interesting.
The Hawks,
Nice.
like I said, they're not
So
playing too
high
well
on the
right now.
Hawks,
Yeah, I
and they're
was high on
so
them, bro,
down
but
bad now. Interesting.
reality has to strike at some point. And yes, I'm a big fan of Dejounte. I do think that him and Trey Young should have done better this season, but the Raptors, I feel like it will be a nightmare matchup. Defensively, they have the length, they have the ability to guard any position. So I feel like the Hawks will struggle a lot against this team, and I feel like the Raptors will advance.
I'm going with the Raptors too. I'm surprised you said. I thought you were gonna pick the Hawks, but I guess we're gonna have to agree for everything today. But I'll have to pick the Raptors too. I mean, regardless, the Raptors. Atlanta. I think is more. Atlanta got Trey Young and DeJounte Murray. They could score. I think DeJounte Murray defensively, has took a,
I don't
he's
know
still a good
about that,
defender,
man.
but in Atlanta, I just feel like I haven't seen it as much as I've seen it in San Antonio. It just feels like he's been more content on talking trash than actually performing defensively. I feel like he took a small notch. He's still a great defender, don't get me wrong, but I'm very disappointed on his performance. Coming to Atlanta, I thought he'd be even more better. And he's not been. I think he's been worse for them. Obviously, I understand playing with Trey and all that, but regardless, Raptors have elite defense. They got the scoring. They got both, and I think that's why the Raptors gonna win this game. All right, so let's move on. So now we would have the loser of the 7th, 8th matchup in the West. So that would be the Timberwolves versus the winner of the 9th and 10th seed. For us, we both picked the Pelicans, so we would have the Timberwolves, the 8th seed, versus the Pelicans, 9th seed. Who gets the 8th seed?
Okay, so for me, yeah, I'm going with the Pelicans. I do know that the Timberwolves, Rudy Gobert should be playing in this game because it's a 1 game suspension, and Anthony Edwards and Cat are there. But the Pelicans, I mean, I just don't see this Timberwolves team doing much. Like they have the talent, but it's not really meshing on the court. And I would say that the issues I feel like they might plague him here because, like you said, Kyle Anderson, Rudy Gobert will be on the court. So how would that work out? But I feel like the Pelicans are more of a unit. They got CJ, they got Brandon Ingram, like you said, and I just feel like they'll take the win.
I gotta agree with you. I'm surprised we're agreeing on everything. I thought you were gonna pick the Hawks and you would pick the Timberwolves, but it looks like the teams that you were somewhat high on. I don't want to say you was too high on the
Yeah.
Timberwolves. Now you finally come to your senses and you have agreed with Tushar. But I also going with the Pelicans here. I mean, you gotta understand on Timberwolves. There's some turmoil on that franchise. Everything's gone south there, and I think the issues with the thing with Kyle Anderson, Rudy Gobert is going to have an effect, and the fact that they lost Jaden McDaniel, I mean, he's their best defender. They traded away basically their whole roster for Rudy Gobert, which Kessler, the guy they traded, has been balling out, playing better than Rudy Gobert, by the way. But you got to give it to I think the Pelicans. I mean, they've been healthier now. Obviously, they don't have Zion, but they have CJ, experienced player. Been here last year. They got Brandon Ingram, who's been on ended the season on fire. Herbert Jones, he's a great defender, great player, great rebounder. Jonas Valanciunas is here. They got some good pieces, and we know the coach that they got, Willie Green's a phenomenal coach. So I got the Pelicans winning. I think the Timbers, all the chaos that they got, is going to end up affecting them and not able to win. But that doesn't mean Anthony Edwards ain't going to put on a show because he can ball. So I got the Pelicans. So it looks like that's our predictions. And that ends episode 38. This is a pretty, I would say, short episode. It's just about the play-in and obviously the disaster of the Dallas Mavericks. But yeah, so then we'll see who's, if our predictions come true or not. And yeah, keep tuning into our podcast, and you can follow us on Instagram at Straight Sports Podcast. And if you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube channel. And yeah, uh, appreciate it. And again, I apologize. Me, Danny, and Joshua apologize for the terrible take we had about the Dallas Mavericks. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for listening. Peace.